Humphreys, please. You have 10 minutes.
And I welcome the opportunity to address the House this evening. At the outset, I wish to state that I fully recognise the hard work, the professionalism and the commitment of all of those people who are working on the front line in providing employment services and supports to people who are out of work. And I know very well the good work the Local Employment Service do in my own home county of Monaghan. They provide valuable support and assistance to people at a time of need, and it is important that that is recognised here tonight. What I cannot escape, however, is the very clear legal advice from the Attorney-General that these services must be subject to a competitive procurement process. Regarding the ILDN legal advice, the ILDN have written to me stating that they have legal advice that states there is no legal requirement to tender. The legal advice from the ILDN was not shared with me or my officials. Instead, the ILDN provided a high-level synopsis of the legal opinion in a letter to me. This was shared with the Office of the Attorney-General, and their views is that their original advice still stands. There must be an open procurement, and I must follow the legal advice from the Attorney-General. Whether the government likes it or not, we have no choice but to put these contracts out to tender. I think we all need to remember that the most important people in this debate are the job seekers. As Minister, my first job is to ensure that quality services are in place and available to help them. I cannot do that if there is a question mark about the legal status of the contracts or if there is a lack of transparency about how those contracts are awarded. Of course, any change that requires existing service providers to submit tenders in a situation where they haven't had to do so for over 25 years will be unsettling. And I recognise these concerns, and that is why my department has engaged extensively over an extended period of time, going back as far as 2018, with representatives of the service providers. We have also split the procurement into two phases. Phase 1 extends coverage into areas where there is no LES provider at present. And I think it is worth pointing out in Phase 1, local partnerships were successful in 2 of the 3 lots where they submitted bids. This clearly shows that the community sector can bid successfully for these services, and I have no doubt that that success will be replicated in Phase 2. Members will be aware that my department commissioned an external review of LES and Job Clubs provision. This review, led by Indicon, involved extensive consultation with the service providers and culminated in the production of 2 reports in 2018. These reports recommended the consolidation of the LES and Job Clubs into a single service, which is the basis of the new Regional Employment Service model. The Indicon reports also recommended improving the governance of existing services, along with the need for open and competitive procurement for contracted employment services. As a next step, the Department then commissioned the Institute of Employment Studies and Social Finance to advise how best to proceed, taking account of the wider employment services landscape. Both of these organisations are not for profit, with international expertise in delivering employment, labour market and social change policies, and again these bodies consulted with service providers. They recommended a revised regional employment services model, consolidating the services currently provided by LES and Job Clubs and focusing on people who were very distant from the labour market. While their report is confidential because it contains detailed cost analysis, it would not be prudent to disclose prior to or during a procurement process. A redacted chapter of the report relating specifically to the Regional Employment Services model was provided to the members of the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Social Protection, Community and Rural Development and the Islands. And I know some people have mentioned the need for further engagement with the sector. There has been extensive engagement already, and I will give you a brief overview. In 2018, all CEOs of the local partnership companies were briefed. In January 2019, my department hosted a briefing on Indacon's recommendations. The Institute for Employment Studies consulted with representatives from the sector and the INOU. In 2019, my officials visited every single provider to inform them of the process and to garner their views and suggestions. Briefings took place on the first request for tender, and a further briefing session on the approach to Phase 2 was held this month, a session which was exclusively reserved for staff or board members of parties interested in bidding. As part of this session, feedback was sought on views with respect to the design of the first procurement phase. I also instructed my officials to meet with SIP2, Forsa and the Irish Local Development Network in a forum to discuss their issues, including their feedback on the first RFT. I have also met with the ILDN, and indeed I will be meeting with them and all the local partnerships again this week. So there has been and continues to be very significant level of engagement. The bottom line is, however, irrespective of this huge level of engagement, of course existing service providers would understandably still prefer if the tender process could just be halted. And I have no doubt every deputy in this House would like to have their contract renewed continuously, irrespective of performance, but that's not how the world works. Stopping the tender process is not an option, and everybody in this House who is concerned about compliance with EU law and proper standards of transparency and governance knows that this is not an option. However, I can assure deputies that, arising from the extensive consultation, suggestions from the sector have been incorporated into the design of the Regional Employment Service model, and feedback from the first phase of procurement is informing the finalisation of the tender design for the second phase. In particular, the design will address issues such as cash flow, minimum referral volumes, and will include a strong emphasis on social value and linkages. I note Sinn Féin in its motion once again attacked JobPath, a contracted employment service delivered by CTech and Tourist Nua. For the record, the two companies involved are community and staff-based enterprises. One is owned by a farmers' cooperative and the other is majority owned by its staff via a staff trust. Between them, the two providers employ over 480 staff all around the country, and I think you are doing a disservice to those 480 people who get up every day, go to work and do their best to help people across this country. The evidence from the OECD report clearly shows that individuals who were supported by JobPath were more likely to enter employment, remain in employment for longer and have higher earnings from employment. And I would encourage the Sinn Féin deputies to speak to your party colleague in Northern Ireland, Minister for Communities Deirdre Hargey, who clearly recognised this when her department recently awarded employment service contracts to one of the JobPath providers, Tourist Nua. So the same JobPath provider Sinn Féin are so critical of in this House, you're happy to give them contracts in Northern Ireland. My priority is about delivering the best possible employment service for the people who need our help and ensuring we do so on a sound legal basis. I think it is important in the context of this evening's motion to note two important facts that are central to an informed and accurate discussion. First, LES and Job Club services are not delivered directly by the state. The decision to establish LES and Job Club services on an externally contracted basis is not a new decision, but was in fact taken 25 years ago. These services have always been externally contracted. That is a simple fact. On the basis of the legal advice received, there is no escaping the obligation to contract out the delivery of services. And I am aware that some observers think that there might be an escape clause of some type. There is not. This advice comes from the Attorney-General and has been discussed at Cabinet. There isn't an obligation on the Government, myself as the responsible Minister and my department, to act in accordance with these advices and adhere to procurement law. My number one priority as Minister is to provide the best possible service to help those who are unemployed. I value the work of all the staff and service providers who work with my department to deliver on this important objective. I want to support them and help them to ensure that they can continue this work. However, I must do this in a way that is compliant with the law and that adheres to the necessary standards of transparency and good governance in public procurement. What I can say is that my department has listened carefully to all of the concerns expressed. In particular, I would emphasise that the Regional Employment Services tender includes a strong focus with a high level of marks awarded on delivering social value through clear embedded linkages with the local community. Despite Sinn Féin's assertion to the contrary, the clear advice from Phase 1 process is that community and voluntary groups can succeed in securing contracts, and I have no doubt that that will be replicated as part of Phase 2. And the Government and I, thank you, the Government and I are committed to expanding the provision of high-quality services across the state so that we can support all those who need assistance in progressing towards employment. And it's imperative that we deliver the best possible services to our people, that these services are available, effective and are procured in a way that meets the state's legal obligations.
Thank you.